Hello, it's Father Dave again. Here we are on May 2nd when all of this coronavirus pandemic began. I mentioned that I don't know the reason why God is permitting this suffering. I'm not going back on my word, but I know that this is a question that many people wrestle with. You know, why does God allow things like this? Things that so disrupt the world, things that cause so much pain and suffering. And I'm probably biting off more than I can chew here, but over the series of a few videos, I want to try to address this a little bit, help us to philosophically and theologically wrestle with this important question. And maybe it helps you, maybe it helps someone else that you know in this struggle. You know, before we even get to why God would allow it, we should ask the question, is it even possible that God exists given that there's suffering in the world? This is one of those classic arguments against the existence of God. Here's how it goes. One of the formulations of this argument. First, an all-knowing God has knowledge of all suffering. So God knows about this because he's all-knowing. The second premise is an all-powerful God has the power to prevent all suffering. If he's all-powerful, he could get rid of it if he wished. The third, a perfectly good God has the desire to prevent all suffering. Right? If God is all good, right, he would want to prevent all suffering. But the fourth premise tells us there is suffering in the world. This is just a basic observation. There is suffering in the world. So the fifth and the conclusion, if there is a God, then he either doesn't know about suffering, or he doesn't have the power to prevent it, or he doesn't want to prevent it. Therefore, God cannot be all-knowing, all-powerful, or all-good. Why? Because suffering exists in the world. So it's a classic, strong argument. But one of the presumptions behind this whole argument, and one of the way that this is being brought out just comes from one of those For Dummies books, right? Philosophy for Dummies, a great series of books that can help us enter into any topic. But it says basically the presumption behind all of this is that all suffering is bad or evil. And if not all suffering is evil, then this argument breaks down. Okay, so how could we claim that not all suffering is evil? Well, the question is, can a good person ever be justified in allowing or even bringing about an instance of pain or suffering? Can a good person be justified in allowing or bringing about pain or suffering? We would initially probably think no, but there's many examples where it would be obvious. You know, a parent, right? They punish a child. They bring about some kind of pain or suffering for a greater good, for that child's development. Or they simply allow the child to suffer the consequences of their actions, right? The child runs in the kitchen and they fall. Well, I told you if you ran on this floor, it's slippery, you would fall. The parent allows that suffering to him. Or the doctor inflicts pain in a surgery so that healing can come about. An athlete, even simpler examples, an athlete, right, inflicts pain through their training so that they can become stronger, right? An academic, right, goes through the experience of great fatigue to try to get to answers and so on. So we would say yes, a good person certainly can be justified in allowing or bringing about pain or suffering. So, therefore, not all suffering is evil. Okay, so that premise or that presumption behind this atheistic argument that God and suffering can't coexist is incorrect. Not all suffering is evil. I want to push the argument a little bit, the limits here of the argument. What about this? If there were one instance of suffering that had no possible good consequence or resolution? Could there be an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful God? And I think the answer would be no. If we could even find one instance of suffering that was outside of the realm of redemption, if you will, or bringing good out of it, this would be inconsistent with the concept of God. So it's not, is all suffering evil? The question is there any suffering that is totally devoid of the possibility of good? Wow. Okay, that's a tough question. Can we ever? we can't examine every suffering to find the answer, right? So let's make it personal here, just to kind of let it sink in a little bit. Is there any possible good that can come out of my illness? Is there any possible good that can come out of my loved one who dies? Is there any possible good that can come out of this depression that I'm in? Is there any possible good that can come from an earthquake? Is there any possible good that can come from this pandemic? And so on. These are the questions, right, that we wrestle with. To understand, right, our suffering is to answer that same question. Is there any possible good that can come out of it? And if we can find something, if we can find a yes answer to that, even in some small way, then the possibility of God is opened up. This argument against God's existence is disarmed. There is suffering in the world, but an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God can bring some good out of it. So that's kind of my introduction here. In the next couple of sessions, we'll talk about some of the possible goods that come out of suffering. Why God would permit an imperfect world. What's the good that He's hoping can come from having created the world imperfect? All right. Thanks for listening. God bless you.